non-cabinet Minister of Economic Reform, supporting the candidature of Sajid Premadasa, contesting under the symbol of the swan. Also joining us tonight on the show is Chaturanga Abhisingha, supporting the candidature of Andhra Kumar Dissanayake, who is contesting under the symbol of the compass. Let's start off tonight's show with Dr. Harsha De Silva, non-cabinet Minister of Economic Reform, supporting the candidature of Sajid Premadasa. Dr. De Silva, a couple of months ago, when elections was called and convened, you said that Gotabaya Rajapaksa is going to be a formidable force in the run-up to the presidential elections. Do you still believe so, or do you think that Sajid Premadasa has now a clear edge over his main competitor? Your time starts now.
Gotabaya Rajapaksa was always a challenge because he is representing the Mahinda Rajapaksa camp, and therefore there is solid vote base behind Gotabaya Rajapaksa, even though he's not a politician, quote unquote, technically. He is with a whole bunch of political animals, politicians. Sajid, on the other hand, got his candidature approved by the UNP much later. He started out with, I think, a fair distance behind Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, but I think over the last several weeks, his campaign has done a tremendous job, and I personally have been with him to multiple locations, and I see the enthusiasm of the crowds. I'm not saying crowds are everything to go by, but what we hear, what we sort of generally, when we talk to people, general opinion among the population, we see that he has come pretty close. I can't tell you today whether we are going to win or otherwise, because I don't have a crystal ball. But having sort of studied this for a long period of time, I think it's a toss-up. I believe that it can go either way, but I hope the people of this nation would consider the merits of Sajid and his team and the merits of Gotabaya and his team, and make the right call. And I think during the course of this program, I'll try to convince folks who may be in two minds why they should vote for Sajid.
Thank you very much. That, of course, was Dr. Harsha De Silva, non-cabinet Minister of Economic Reforms, supporting the candidature of Sajid Premadasa, contesting under the symbol of the swan. Let me now move my attention to Mr. Risripal Tendakon, SLFP Municipal Councillor, supporting the candidature of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, contesting under the symbol of the lotus bud. Now, one of the allegations levelled at the Gotabaya Rajapaksa camp is the fact that despite the fact that the pack has been somewhat shuffled, Mr. Tendakon, the jokers remain the same. If you look at the people who were supporting the candidature of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, you've seen individuals who have been tainted with corruption and so on and so forth. I'm not talking about the last 4 years, because Gotabaya Rajapaksa was not in power, or Mahinda Rajapaksa was not in power. But let's go back or rewind between 2005 and 2015. So given this fact, how do you believe that Gotabaya Rajapaksa has a good chance to win the upcoming elections?
Of course, yes. I firmly believe that he is the leading candidate in this contest, and he has done enough homework compared to all the other candidates, and he is very well supported by a team of able people who know what they are doing, who knew that they were preparing for a contest like this to put forward a candidate of like Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So therefore, he is well ahead, in my own opinion, of the others in this contest. And the only very significant difference in the candidature of Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is that the fact that he was preparing for a presidential election for a long time. He had a team of people working, preparing policies, studying issues, and then working as a team, getting together, consulting people, going around the country, meeting the people, conveying their views and obtaining their views. I mean, he was full of action for over a long, fairly a long period of time, running up to about 1 year, 2-3 months. His team was working. So therefore, there is a very big difference between the other candidates, and of course the two main candidates are Mr. Sajith Premadasa and Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. And the group that I am representing, I could say that we had done our homework and the preparations for a presidential election proper, whereas the others had their own problems in coming to the fray, in getting themselves nominated, in getting themselves selected by their own parties. They had their disadvantages. So therefore, in that respect, Gotabaya Rajapaksa is in a very good, strong position to lead a campaign, at the same time to convince the people with policies which he has worked a long time before he faced this election.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rishabal Tenakon, SLFP Municipal Councillor, supporting the candidature of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who is contesting under the symbol of the lotus bud at the November 16th presidential polls. We now move our attention to Chaturanga Abesinghe, who is an activist supporting the candidature of Anukumara Dissanayake, contesting under the symbol of the compass. Chaturanga, when you look at the crowds in the SLPP rallies and the UNP rallies, it's quite evident that Anukumara Dissanayake cannot garner support from a majority of the public to attend even the rallies. And if you look at the last local government elections, JP was able to get approximately around 750,000 votes. But you are looking at approximately 6.2 million votes if you are to emerge victorious in the first round of counting itself at an election. How positive do you think that Anukumara Dissanayake can occupy the top job in Sri Lanka on the 16th of November?
Yes. To answer that question in a simple way, so it's the expectation or the hope that we have put forward for people. So there was a large hope in 2015, and there was hope in 2009 after the war. There was hope for people in 2015, but we have, in a very short period, we have seen that hope was denied by the ruling parties. So now with Mr. Anukumara Dissanayake coming as a candidate, we are trying to solve three main issues. One is political culture. If we have a problem, we have to find solutions. So these are three problems we have faced. One is political culture, other one is political savviness and activism. That is all of us. And the third one is national policies. So now Mr. Anukumara Dissanayake and his team with intellects and civil societies had put forward an option. Now it's up to the people for them to decide whether they will put Mr. Anukumara Dissanayake in the top position. Now, in a context of large two political parties that has been building their power over years with huge media presence, with huge amount of money comparatively, now people has the time to decide whether they need the alternative or not. So what from National People's Power has done is given option. And we are very positive given the interest that we get and the level of discussions we go into, the type of conversations we are having, the ground is changing. People need a change and they are looking for an absolute change. It's not a person change. And if I go back to Mr. Harsh and Mr. Tenakon, they are presenting individuals. And we have had this experience ever and ever where the individual is maybe good, or individual is a caliber of a person who you can rely on, but the team who's behind and the intent of the individual matters. So we are very positive that people will take a very significant decision on 16th of December.
Thank you very much, Chaturanga Abesinghe, supporting the candidature of Anukumara Dissanayake, contesting under the symbol of the compass at the upcoming elections. Let me introduce our journalists tonight on the show. On to my immediate right is Nadim Majid. On to my far right is the very well known, very vocal Faraz Shaukat joining us tonight on the show. Let's start off tonight's show with Faraz.
Thank you, Shami. Question to Dr. Harsha De Silva, please. Dr. De Silva, what is the single one item that will of Sajid Premadasa that will appeal to the public to vote for him?
Revolution. It's a revolution. I agree with Chaturanga. People need a revolution. And this is a social revolution, a political revolution. That is what Sajid is promised. Samaja Viplavya. Deshapalana Viplavya. Sometimes the word revolution is associated with, not so good, violence. No, this is a social, a good revolution. See, Mr. Siripala Tendakon was saying that, look, we knew for years that it was Mr. Rajapaksa who was coming. Obviously, it is a family rule. It's a family party. It's a family-controlled regime. And that is not who we want to be. We are now no longer a monarchy, ruled by some royal family. That family is better than every other family. In that SLPP, there is no democracy for Mr. Tendakon to ever be anybody of standing. I'm sorry, I don't mean in a bad way, but because unless you carry the name Rajapaksa, you have no choice. Because if it is not the brothers, if it is not the children, if it is not anybody else. I agree, on the other hand, with Chaturanga, that it is the team that matters. Individuals may have good intentions. Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa may have good intention, but the question that you asked, who's with him? What change has he brought? Who has he put forward? Anybody different to who we knew from 2005 to 2015, right? On the other hand, again, the National People's Power Movement, they've got different people. It's not just the JVP, it's the others, right? But if you look at our two main parties, the revolution Sajid is proposing is one that changes the political culture completely. He has said that he will have a new cabinet. He had promised that people with credible allegations of corruption and violence will not be entertained in the
Dr. Hudson, what constitutes a credible allegation of corruption or wrongdoing? For example, if someone's name is mentioned several times in the report of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the bond scam, does that amount to a credible allegation of corruption?
Yeah, we have to be careful, right? Because in today's media, social media particularly, all kinds of mud gets thrown at people. So what I'm saying is we got to separate the allegation that anyone can make to a credible one, which means there is some justice, some legal basis to it. So if there's any allegation of corruption with a legal basis, then I would think that is.
But I'm trying to understand where you draw the line, though. Is it like, for example, an indictment by the Attorney General?
Of course. Of course.
Being, let's say, proceedings at the magistrate's court?
Of course.
But Dr. Harsha, isn't democracy the sort of the cornerstone, the presumption of innocence?
Yes.
So, in the way you're putting it, it appears that Mr. Premadasa will take the law into his own hands.
No. That is why I particularly mentioned the word credible. Otherwise, I would have just said allegations of corruption. Right? People can allege all kinds of things, but it has to be credible. So what I'm saying is, Sajid will have to define specifically, what he means. But the message he wants to convey is that I will not have people who have been indicted or who's in.
What are you saying? Are you saying that he's going to wait until they go through a legal process? Or is he going to say, well, you finish your legal proceedings and if you're free, then I'll consider you?
See, what he said is not people convicted of corruption. What he said is allegations of corruption. And what I'm trying to define is credible allegations of corruption. So that is just one thing, right? And then he said no family members. It's very, very categorically stated, no family members. You elect a person, you don't elect the person's wife and children and brother and sister-in-law and everyone else. So then he has said that business and politics will not be tolerated in one and the same sentence. During the day you are running your ministry, during the evening you are running your business. You know, that is where corruption begins. Then he had said the things like the luxury car permits, right, will certainly be removed. And he also said that asset declaration must be online, right? And I being one of only 9 people in Parliament whose asset declaration is online, I can very openly speak about it, right? None of the Rajapaksas have done it, right? So when you come to complete change in the political sort of culture that we want to change, you have to be credible and you have to say these are the things I'm going to do. So you asked me to give you one word, and that one word is revolution, an entire revolution.
Mr. Tennakoon, Doctor, I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to what the Minister said about others not being able to amount to much in the SLPP, but I'd also like to frame some context around it. You've been in active politics for a long time, even as an active unionist, and if I'm not mistaken, you are the one-time organizer for the Mirigama electorate
Yes.
of the SLFP. A lot of questions have been asked now about the future of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and how the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is going to continue in this alliance that it has with the Potujana Peramuna. You have Mr. Kumara Welgama, who has come out on stage and is saying, you know, if the SLPP wins, it will be the death of the SLFP. As a long-standing SLF peer, how do you respond to something like that? And how do you see your future in politics within the Sri Lanka Potujana Peramuna?
Well, I would first like to deal with the question of this family affair, whether it's a family circle that represents Gotabaya Rajapaksa. I must say, if we go into the history of politics in this country, we had fathers, sons, mothers and daughters. They are all family people. You go to the time when D.S. Senanayaka was the Prime Minister. The first controversy arose because of the fact that he wanted to give a place to Dudley Senanayaka and not to Bandaranaike. So that was a family affair. When Chandrika was the president, Prime Minister was Mrs. Bandaranaike. You know, this has been the pattern in this country, you know, whether we like or not. When some people come into the forefront and do some work with some commitment, you know, they don't get isolated in that. They continue in that.
But Mr. Nikhil, the problem is we don't want history repeating itself over and over again.
No, we can bring about the changes that we want, but what is right now happening is something in keeping with what has been happening in the country. There's nothing very unusual. So therefore, if we really want to change it, it may happen. How do we know that Mr. Gotabaya Senanayaka will continue in the same direction, Gotabaya Rajapaksa will continue in the same direction as the others before? I mean, these are matters
So
to
you
be...
will say Gotabaya Rajapaksa would take or go on the footprints that Mahinda Rajapaksa laid before in Sri Lanka, no democracy, no press freedom. Are you saying he's going to follow suit?
No. He doesn't. He will not go to continue what was identified as bad or what the society wanted not to happen again. I mean, so most certainly that will not be the right thinking of any person.
But the allegation leveled by the opposition is that he was responsible for most of it. Let's talk about the white van abductions that took place. Let's talk about the killing of journalists. And in fact, Mr. Tennakoon, you on the show, Face the Nation, a couple of months ago, before the local government elections, before you were announced as a individual who will be sitting for the SLFP in the Colombo Municipal Council. You said that the SLPP policies are wrong, and that you believe that the SLFP is the way to go about, and that is why people should appoint or elect members from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and not the SLPP, because we've seen this happening over and over again. And now you are campaigning for Gotabaya Rajapaksa. There's no problem in it, because it's a position that your party has taken, but at the end of the day, it's policy.
I think, Shamir, we have to believe in what is called metamorphosis. Things don't remain the same. When the SLPP started breaking as a breakaway group from the SLFP, naturally the SLFPers will look at it in a different way. But when as time goes on, as things happen in a different way, as things move on, you know, there are a lot of...
Then comes the question.
There are a lot of...
question.
I'm
SLFP.
coming to that question. There are a lot of developments that are taking place. So we have to act according to those developments. You see, now the developments that have taken place is, now the SLPP, if you, in the political arena of this country, is the only party within such a shortest possible time, you know, was able to get the maximum support of the masses in this country. Look at the election results of the local government elections. SLPP alone, with their lotus bud symbol, they could manage to get 5 million votes. 5 million votes, as against a very long-standing 50-year-old UNP getting 3 million. So, I mean, this is...
But you can't compare.
No, it is not the presidential election. The support that they got from the people, it is the vote that matters, whether it is presidential election or whether it is a local government election. It is the people who go and cast their votes. They cast their votes this time in the local government election for the symbol, for the man, and for Mahinda Rajapaksa, with Mahinda Rajapaksa in their mind.
But Mr. Tenukon,
that is a fact that no one can deny that.
It brings us back to that question. So in that case, this case where you have the SLPP as a surging, let's say, new, in inverted commas, political party.
Yes.
You have the grand old party of the United National Party, and then you have the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. What is the future of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party in this new dynamic?
Well, I mean, there can be a lot of polarizations happening in the political arena. Sometimes the SLPP and the SLFP may join together as one single party. Who knows? And there is every possibility that it can happen, because it is a parliamentary election that is going to decide the fate of this country.
Is the SLFP...
You know, a presidential election is only the start. Okay. So if you don't have a parliament to support that president, you know what happened during this time. The Prime Minister was on going in one direction. The President was thinking otherwise. There was a conflict. So this cannot continue. The Parliament and the President will have to, according to the prevailing situation, the prevailing circumstances, and the Constitution that is in force, you know, unless the President and the Parliament are together, you know, it's very difficult.
So Chaturanga takes back to the answer that you gave before. You said that there needs to be change. We have to think otherwise, not the usual politicians who have come to the forefront to contest an election. So why would someone vote Andrew Kumar Dissanayake if that's the case? And why not they vote Mai Saranayaka, who is completely brand new?
Right.
And he's all surrounded by a set of intellectuals.
Right.
And why Andrew Kumar Dissanayake if that's the case?
So at the first, the word that you asked Dr. Harsha was one word that we use is integrity, right? So the credibility word Dr. brought in, we can't find credibility because the governments who have ruled, and whole society knows there has been corruption. Whole society knows there has been corruption. Whole society knows there has been accusations in courts, but nobody got convicted. Now this is not going to change even with Sajith Premadasa. So that's what the voters and the society should know.
Well, Chaturanga, if you take a look at Andrew Kumar Dissanayake individually, he entered Parliament in the year 2000 and was a minister only for 2.5 years, and then split from the Mahinda Rajapaksa government and sat in the opposition again. So he does not have any idea about governance in the country.
Okay.
That's what the people believe.
Okay, so let
And
me.
how can he?
So I'll answer
be
both the
president.
questions.
You know,
Yes.
how can he be the president of the country when he couldn't even be in a ministerial post for the complete 6 years?
Yeah, so the ministerial post, he was there for 14 months, and the things he has done and what's been outcome of those ministries are very much evident. But the thing is that principally they could not stand with the government for 6 years. That is one question. To answer whether he is a leader, Janata Vimukti Peramuna itself is a large organization. When you come to a corporate, right, you think about a corporate. Corporate needs to have a vision. Corporate needs to have a discipline. Corporate needs to have a goal. Now, driving large amount of people towards one goal, having one discipline, having has to face many difficulties in the competition itself talks about leadership. That is one. And why Mr. Mahesh Senanayake and not Andhra Kumar Disanayake or Mr. Mahesh Senanayake. Mr. Andhra Kumar Disanayake and his team gives us political leadership, and they have proven over the last 30 years that they are credible and a team who denies corruption by the core. Right? And
Chaturanga, when you mentioned that, it just takes me when you're talking
Yeah.
about integrity and accountability on the part of it. You heard Dr. Harsh Disra mention, of course, that he's also one of only 9 members of parliament who have made the asset declarations publicly available. Now, in that group of 9, it's not just UNPs. There are, I think, 3 ministers from the UNP. There are 3 SLPP aligned MPs. There is an MP from the TNA, there is an MP from the SLMC, and even from the SLFP as well from the East. I find it very interesting that there is not a single JVP MP who has come forward to make their asset declaration public.
that's a voluntary declaration.
It's it's compulsory to submit it to the Secretary General of Parliament if you're an MP, and if a minister, then to the Presidential Secretariat. But to make it publicly available, to go beyond the legal requirement and make it publicly available as a show of your accountability to the people who vote for you.
Yeah.
In spite of all of the rhetoric that we hear from the JVP MPs regarding personal accountability towards their voters, not one of the 6 have made it public.
Yeah, so I think that's a party decision in terms of whether making it public and how they would go about this. So there is a view on JVP on the asset declaration itself. So how it's been structured and what is the background to that, because one of the facts is you can declare, right? And again, what do you declare? From where onwards you would declare? So I think they have not taken a decision to declare it. I agree with you. I think we need to ask that question from Janata Vimukti Peramuna again from internal perspective. But when it comes to the current issue of not change happening, and the integrity that we have found in that party has helped us to decide to support them, because we can stand by as activists or people who are professionals who we would see that 508 they have in the whole system, the political, the Pradesh Sabhas and Palat Sabhas. There has not been any allegation, because they have a different way of doing politics. They bring politics beyond self-interest to public interest. That's a different culture itself. I think sometimes we also can't stand by that extreme level of the principles that they follow.
But Chaturanga, then we come back to that same question, I think, what Shamir is asking as well. And I think we had this discussion actually with the JVP's mayoral candidate for the Colombo Municipal Council elections, when we had representatives of the mayoral candidates on Face the Nation almost a year ago, more than a year ago. We asked this question, and the public tend to get this feeling that, you know, just because JVPers or JVP municipal council members and Pradesh Sabha members and parliamentarians don't have allegations of corruption, they have no demonstrated capability to govern. And an example that is constantly brought up is the Tisamaharama Pradesh Sabha, where they say that the JVP failed in governing that Pradesh Sabha. And again, like Shamir said, during their brief stint with the UPFA, the first UPFA government, that they failed to demonstrate a capability to govern the country. Do you think that the absence of corruption is a good enough reason to vote, that should be the only reason to vote for the NPP?
No.
Don't you think that there should be a capability to govern as well?
So the capability to govern comes through administrative capabilities, and in terms of Tissa Maharama and the ministries they held, I think the media has taken enough toll on what didn't happen versus what happened. So Tissa Maharama, if you really explore into details, the things that happened was significantly different from any Pradesi Sabha. They won 3 times the best Pradesi Sabha ever. And until Mahinda Rajapaksa regime decides that they should not allow to continue such change in a Pradesh Sabha also. And when it comes to the change, what you hear is, if you really ask the voters and the public, if I come to politics tomorrow, what credibility do I have in governance? Right? You have a system which is corrupt, which is not changing. Every time if a newcomer comes, you will ask me that question.
But see, in your case, I would be able to answer it, knowing some of your background, in your proficiency in the work that you've done in the private sector, your capability as a data scientist. You have all of those other qualifications that will reinforce the voters' belief in what you can do to govern. I'm saying that in the case of most of the JVP leadership, that is missing.
So let me answer that. JVP did not ever say that those are the 6 people who's going to rule the country. So they have 140 intellects who did 12 policies for the country, national policies, who has experience, who has policy experience, who has done work. And they have a layer of people like us who have run work in organizations and professional level, so that we are ready to take this country forward. So in a nutshell, what I would say is, the JVP will give us the political background. We don't have that knowledge. We don't have that
ability. Thank you very
ability.
much, Chaturanga. I just want to quickly shift to Dr. Harsha De Silva. Dr. De Silva, let's take a look at the recent numbers as far as elections are concerned. The UNP-led Maithripala Sirisena regime was able to gain 6.2 million votes at the last presidential elections. As Mr. Tennekon correctly pointed out, the SLPP was able to gain 5 million votes at the last local government elections. Put together the SLFP support at the last local government elections, it comes to a cumulative of 6.4 million votes for the SLPP at present. Whereas if you look at the best performance of the UNP over the last couple of years, we can only take into account the 2015 presidential elections, and they were able to get 6.2 million votes, again shy of 200,000 votes, would make Gotabaya Rajapaksa emerge victorious at the elections. How would the mentality of the ordinary voter change in the next couple of days, and why would they vote for Sajid Premadasa?
We shall take Mr. Tenekon's own analysis there is dynamics. You know, nothing changes the same. Nothing stays the same. Keep changing, right? So what has happened over the years is, yes, I agree with Mr. Tenekon. The olden days it's family. You know, that's how it was. You know, there was some, in a village, there was some leading family, and everybody had to sort of, you know, worship that family. When the man walked on the street, the rest had to get into their drain. That is the way it was. Society keeps changing. Everyone, you know, they got their own dreams and aspirations, and they see what's happening in the world. They realize that they are free, particularly after 2015, when we gave people the right to be critical, right to speak their mind, right to write what they feel. They felt, look, you know, we are free. Nobody is going to firebomb your studio anymore. Nobody is going to kill you for what you say. Nobody is going to break your bones, right? 4.5 years, people protested. They criticized us. No one ever pulled the trigger on anyone. No one ever pulled the trigger on anyone. The entire duration of our government. But some people who think they have already won, so full of themselves, SP Disanayakas, people the other day, pull the trigger on people who were, all what they were doing was blocking his car. You see, that is not what we want. So what I'm trying to say is that people are beginning to feel their own individuality, right? And unlike in the past where they say no kapuat kola and kapuat nil and so on, that's changing. People are going to look at the good and bad. People are going to look at the policies. I applaud the NPP for having put 12 different, sub-manifestos. We were not able to do that. We had a manifesto and we have gone into great detail in this manifesto here. Of course, we did it in Sinhala, English and Tamil. Mr. Rajapaksa's manifesto was only in Sinhala and there was just an abstract in English, and I don't know whether they had anything in Tamil. That's another story. But right? But it was an abstract, not a proper one. It was just a summary, a few pages. That's not what we mean. We mean that we treat everyone equally, and that equality gives them the opportunity to make up their mind. So when we present our manifesto in all 3 languages, we showed these people, this is what we plan to do for you, right? So in that context, what happened in the past, I don't think is a great indicator of what will happen this time or into the future, right? There is this thing called the undecided voter, the young voter, right? They are thinking.
Dr. Harsha, let's get back to bolts and nuts of the new cabinet that Sajid Premadasa would appoint. At an event held yesterday, we saw some young politicians like yourself, Ran Vikramaratne, Marika Buddhika Patirana, Harin Fernando, a few of the young blood of the UNP attending this particular event in question, and then Sajid Premadasa had tweeted saying a taste of the new cabinet. How sure are you individuals whose names have been involved with the central bank bond controversy and things like that won't come to the forefront or to the limelight in this new cabinet that would be elected by Sajid Premadasa?
I mean, it is quite evident, who Sajid invited and what his message was to the people. I don't want to go beyond that. Of course, there were others who couldn't make it because they were out campaigning in their electorates. But he's been able to present a group of people. He's been able to say, look, these are actually going to be people who will help run this country in the event I am elected president, right? So that message is given to the people so that the people will have a certain level of comfort, right? Certain level of comfort, because he needs to be able to convince, right, the undecided voter, the thinking voter, who's not just going to vote the same way their parents are going to vote. It's interesting. I speak to people in our electorates. Mother and father have always voted a particular party, but the children not necessarily vote the same party. They vote somebody else.
So new cabinet, Mr. Nikon, can Gotabaya Rajapaksa say the same thing, or who's surrounding him right now?
No, I think he
in
has
terms of a new cabinet.
In the case of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he has an experienced, a well-trained, well-exposed person.
The brother.
To come, his own brother, to come as the Prime Minister. There's no secret about it. I mean, it is already known among the voters.
So the pack has been shuffled, the joker remains the same.
No, I don't call him a joker anyway. I mean, that's left to you to say.
He meant in the pack of cards.
Pack of cards, pack of cards.
Yes.
Thanks, Ash.
No, facts remain, so therefore, he is a able person. Now, he has been able to run this country for 10 years, as the president, and he selected his own cabinet. He even gave portfolios to people who crossed over to his side from the UNP. Now, say, Karu Jayasuriya, the present speaker, was a member of his cabinet. He knew what to give him, the portfolio. So, therefore, we have an experienced group of people to manage the affairs of a party at the time when things are wanted to be done in that manner. So therefore, that way, Gotabaya Rajapaksa
So
has
it's not a new team that is going to take over. It's
No,
going
we
to be
can't
the
say-
old team.
No, we can't say
But
that.
Mr. Tennecoon, when you talk about the assigning of portfolios, one of the problems, one of the gripes that a lot of people have is that, with the current government, the mixing and matching of portfolios was maybe not the best or not scientific enough.
Yeah,
But
not
with
at all. Not at all.
but with the previous government,
Yeah.
they were willing to subdivide portfolios to such an extent that at one point people were actually wondering whether we'd have a ministry for Halmas, so because we'd already worked our way through coconuts and sugar and with this thing. So it's two sides of the same coin, and you were talking about how now there is a growing voice among young voters especially calling for a change to that system. But you seem to be suggesting that no, the system that prevailed under with Mahinda Rajapaksa will be restored with Mahinda
No, I
Rajapaksa
don't say
as
so.
Prime Minister.
I don't say so. I have no right to say so because we are now bound by guided by a new constitution which stipulates the maximum number of cabinet ministers that a country can have according to the constitution. And how and under what circumstances can that number be exceeded in the event of the formation of a national government. You see, all those things are now stipulated. As things go on, even democracy advances. The way how things apply and how the rules apply, the rules change, acts come in, constitutions change. So therefore, we are now in a different situation. Whether it is Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa or anyone else, they have to abide by the constitutional provisions in this country. The number of cabinet members cannot exceed 30 if there is no formation of a national
Mr.
government.
Tennecoon, just very quickly, you heard the Minister mention, and Shamir mentioned regarding the event yesterday where Minister Sajid Premadasa introduced a few faces as his team, who are of current parliamentarians, the current people in active politics who are going to be some of the key figures in his team.
Yes.
Can you name a similar sort of team from within the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna?
You mentioned
or
Mahinda
SLFP,
Rajapaksa.
Other than for Mahinda Rajapaksa,
No, I don't-
young
I don't-
faces, new faces.
I don't want to sort of preempt the situation by naming names and things like that. But this is a matter for
But
now.
the ordinary voter who's watching the show
Yes.
will want to know what the team would look like in the future. So you probably will have to give them some sort of an indication, Mr. Tennecoon, because if they are a floating voter and if they are to go and vote on the 16th of November in front of the Lotus Bud, they would want to know what is the team like, because we know already what Sajid Premadasa is going to bring to the table. What about Gotabaya Rajapaksa?
The voters in this country, I think the people who support Gotabaya Rajapaksa have had the best opportunity of interacting with him and in their presence, and in different forums before. So now the Viat Maga, the program that he launched throughout the country with some intellectuals, some experienced people, ex-government servants and so on, that had interactions with people in all levels of society. So they have had this opportunity of asking him who is going to be in the cabinet, who should be in the cabinet. All those things have been very properly interacted, and they know, they are aware at the moment as to what his thinking is, because he has been exposed more than any other candidate in this aspect of the governance. I think
I can name a few people. Let's talk about the Viat Maga Foundation and those who are involved in this campaigning and so on and so forth. You have individuals like Nala Gudheva.
No. I don't agree. Now see,
Then you have
no,
Ajit
we can't.
Kumar Kabra.
No. If you are trying to just point out and say that these are the people who are going to be in the cabinet, I can't agree with you, because there is no such consensus in the party or in the group, to have them have individuals like, what you mentioned as cabinet ministers.
No, I did not mention. I said those who are surrounding.
No, they are
Gotabaya
the
Rajapaksa at
people.
present.
They are the people. They are also involved in this policy making. Now, for example, I had the opportunity of representing or being present in two of the committees that were functioning before this election. That was one of the economic committee, the other one was the security committee. I saw the type of people. I did not see any of those people whom you mentioned in those committees, because your imagination that they are everywhere and they are all over, it's wrong. I did not
They're
see.
not.
They were not there in that committee that I represented. I participated. There were various other people, ex-government servants, ex-civil servants, then people who are eminently exposed to those subjects that we were discussing. I mean, that was the type of people with whom we were associated with.
Mr. Rusupala, are you saying that candidate Rajapaksa will shed his baggage if he wins? The baggage, in terms of baggage, I mean exactly what Shamir said. He seems to be surrounded by people who are helping him, assisting in whichever way, but people who are tainted, people who are under investigation. Nanaka Godaheva was heading the SEC, and there are cases surrounding that. There's at least one case surrounding that. So what on earth, what policy measures can he suggest to candidate Rajapaksa?
Faraz, I want you to look at it more objectively. Look at all the other candidates. I mean, generally the main part. Now take the UNP. Who is supporting Sajid Premadasa? I mean, in that group, he himself says that I will do away with people who have allegations leveled against them on corruption.
That's right.
Now,
That's precisely what I mean.
The fact that they are
Rajapaksa hasn't said anything like that.
No,
That's the problem.
The fact that they are associated as a group, as a team, does not mean that they are to be given places. In the same way, if you apply the same theory here, there are various people associated in this team. You know that it need not necessarily mean that they are the people who are going to be selected or put into these places. Why should we assume that? Why should we assume that?
But I think
Why should we apply a different standard to these people?
There's no different standard. What I'm saying is, Mr. Premadasa has been quite open. He says, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm not going to have, as Dr. Harshad Silva also confirmed, he says, I'm not going to have people who have credible allegations of fraud or corruption.
No,
But Mr. Rajapaksa hasn't said anything like that.
No, you see, in the case of Mr. Premadasa, there is a difference. No, he is the running government now. He is in the government which is ruling the country now. So there are people surrounding him who are facing lot of allegations. And he has to give an answer to that situation. Whereas in the case of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, these were allegations leveled against them, as you rightly said, not yet proven. Nothing is proved yet.
Right.
Under a different government, they could not bring those culprits into books. Nothing has happened. How many people have been exonerated, discharged? The case is dropped.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tennakoon. We are in conversation with Mr. Rusupala Tennakoon, Dr. Harshad Silva, as well as Chaturanga Abhisinghe on the run-up to the presidential polls. Who will emerge victorious? It's in your hands at the end of the day. You would go to the polling booth on the 16th of November and you would cast your ballot. We're just trying to help you out to make a decision by that day. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back.
ජනාධිපතිවරණය 2019 රත්මලාන ස්ටයින් මැදිරි සංකීර්ණයේ සිට ප්‍රවෘත්ති වාර්තාකරණයේ ප්‍රමුඛයා නිවුස් ෆර්ස්ට් සමග ෆර්ස්ට් ඇන්ඩ් ෆාස්ට් ප්‍රතිඵල විකාශය නොවැම්බර් 16 වනදා සවස 6:30 සිට සජීවීව
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We are discussing about the presidential elections 2019. Who is it going to be on the 17th of November if the Elections Commissioner decides to announce the winner on the first round of counting itself? Let's wait and see for that. We are in conversation with representatives from the SLPP, NDF as well as the NPP. Let's start off the show now with Chaturanga Abhisinghe, activist supporting the candidature of Andrakumar Dissanayake, contesting under the symbol of the compass. Chaturanga, interestingly, there are 35 candidates this time around who are contesting the upcoming presidential polls. And Andrakumar Dissanayake is one of them. And you very clearly said that people have to vote for change, but you were not really clear whether or not Andrakumar Dissanayake would be able to gain the top job of Sri Lanka on the 17th of November. Given that fact, given the fact that it's going to be a tough run for Andrakumar Dissanayake at the upcoming elections, why must anyone go out there and waste that one vote they have? And why must they vote Andrakumar Dissanayake in?
In the first place, it's not a waste of a vote, right? So we have been discussing for the last 5 years the system needs to change, and 225 is no more required, and we need to bring in new people. We need to bring into principally driven political culture, right? So, and also you know how tough it is to do politics in this country. So if you are looking at a general election of bringing good people into politics, and also that we have an opportunity to go to people and to present to people what change really means. The National People's Power is using this opportunity to bring that discussion. Now we have invited us also.
Let's hypothetically say that Andrakumar Dissanayake is elected president, as you say right now. Let's hypothetically say that he's elected president of Sri Lanka, the 7th executive president of the country. If so, Andrakumar Dissanayake currently accuses the Sri Lanka Jana Peramuna as well as the UNP in parliament and also outside now in political fora. Which members would be appointed to the cabinet?
Yeah, so at this point, so basically you have to get the Prime Minister from the current parliament. But as you know, we all know after a presidential election, the drive is towards to have a parliamentary election.
And the parliamentary election can only be called on the 2nd of March.
Yes.
So until such time, Andrakumar Dissanayake
has to have an understanding and a negotiated roadmap up until March. So at that point, the person who has the highest number of votes in the parliament will has to negotiate with Mr.
They say there are no friends or enemies in politics. I'm criticizing the UNP and the SLPP so vigorously and vociferously in political platforms. Do you think through negotiation they'll be able to come to
in principle you are against
agreement?
or you are for certain things, but in a practical terms you have to navigate this. For example, this presidential election is similar thing. If Janata Vimukti Peramuna or National People's Power did not contest, now you do take that decision back, we should be supporting either Gotabaya Rajapaksa or Sajith Premadasa.
But at the 2015 elections, the JP did not support
anyone, but then as a political front or a team who want to bring a difference, we have to take a stance. You can't just go naive and say that we don't support anyone, you go and vote for anybody else. There's a political ideology, there's a political vision and a drive. For National People's Power has a long-term vision. This presidential election is not why National People's Power was built. National People's Power was built to change this country's political ecosystem. At that, when we are building that, even this policy document, and when both two teams are struggling to provide names, we have people here named and who worked on the policy. And this started 2 years back. Now that process is continuing.
But named and mentioned in the policy document per se, Chaturanga, does not warrant that they will be elected to the parliament.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, the people have the franchise.
Yes.
They go up there and vote. So how sure are you?
Yeah, so how
that,
sure are you as
the people-
voters?
the people would
Now
vote,
you have
in
seen
these policy,
yes.
the names that you mentioned.
Yeah, so you have seen in many years, it's about the intent of a politician that has corrupted the system. So from, it's not that franchise has to decide, I don't believe in that. If the nomination level, at the nomination level is a party can put forward non-corrupt, educated and a person, people with vision, people have the choice. Now doing politics in this country is a little difficult given the media and the money that is required, but it's changing, as doctor said, it's changing, people are thinking differently, we reach to 30% digitally now, right? So things are changing and we hope when we present the best team out there and we will win the parliamentarians. Simple example, when JVP contested with SLSP, what happened? 36 candidates. Did you know them, many of them? Did you know any of them? I didn't, right? So as soon as, when there's this, the political environment is clear in for us to contest and then we put forward the right people, we believe that the educated voter today will select the right
Thank you very much,
candidates.
Chaturanga. I need to quickly move to Dr. Harsha De Silva, supporting the candidature of Sajid Premadasa, contesting under the symbol of the swan. Dr. De Silva, now interestingly, in 2015 when the central bank bond controversy took place, you were very vocal about it. You in fact came on the show, we were discussing, Faraz and I, we were discussing prior to the show, you came on the show and said, yes, there has been a mistake and we must correct it. And you were very, very forceful in what you said, and you articulated your position as an individual. But you did not see Sajid Premadasa articulating his stance on matters of national importance, and that is an allegation leveled by the opposition. How sure are you that he is the most suitable candidate to take the country forward when he has been very silent on matters of national interest?
Actually, I was going to ask earlier, but I didn't get the opportunity from Mr. Tennakon about what SLPP's position is on the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Because I have seen in multiple places those people, I don't know whether Mr. Rajapaksa himself has said it or not, that, but I know Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa has said it, that they need to sort of revert to the 18th Amendment and the 19th Amendment should be done away with. Now, you know, a lot hinges upon that. And if we are in the 19th Amendment, post-19th Amendment, and we are going to continue with this, which I hope will be the case, then the President is the head of the state, head of the cabinet, and the chief of the armed services. Right? He does not hold ministries. Ministries will be held by 30 other individuals appointed according to the Constitution. So in that context, Sajid Premadasa will give national leadership, and the subject-specific matters would be dealt with professionals, hopefully as many as possible, running those institutions and taking decisions on specific issues. While I do agree with you that Sajid has been fairly subdued in his engagement both in Parliament and outside on matters outside his purview, what he was doing for a number of years was building grassroots support for the UNP and for a potential presidential run. Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he said, you know, met with a few people or many people over for a year or something like that with the Vietmaga crowd and so on. Sajid has been doing it for the last 10 years. He's been meeting people, talking to people, going around the country, building homes for them, you know, speaking to people. So Sajid is qualified in the sense of, you said if popularity is the way in which president is elected, then Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck would become president. But a democracy, it's that. Now, who is the Mickey Mouse? Who is the Donald Duck here?
No, but let's talk about matters of national importance.
So
matters of national importance.
So what I'm saying is, that we have to put the most popular candidate forward, right? The most popular candidate from a particular party. So why is it that we put Sajid Premadasa as opposed to someone else? Why are they putting Rajapaksa against some other Rajapaksa, right? So therefore, while he has, I accept, right, could have spoken more about national policies, and we can't change the past, but I hope in the future going forward he would do more. But I must add that
Very quickly, Doctor.
yeah, that he was focusing on the rural areas, on housing, because if you ask him, he said, I was given a subject to deal with, that is housing, and I dealt with it to the best of my ability. And people see him as a person who's delivered, and now people see him as a man with a plan. So, and a team.
Thank you very much,
people will
Doctor.
believe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha De Silva. Supporting the candidate of Sajid Premadasa, I quickly move to Mr. Rusiripal Tenakon, SLFP Municipal Council, supporting the candidature of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Mr. Tenakon, when looking at the team of the parties that are supporting supporting Sajid Premadasa, you could see Rauf Hakim, Rushad Badiuddin, and this has been an allegation levelled by many individuals from the SLPP, saying they have been surrounded by extremist forces and so on and so forth. But little do people realize that Mahinda Rajapaksa recently visited Pilian. The discussions that took place there was a closed-door discussion, hence people don't know what was discussed. Karuna Amman, who has killed so many single Buddhists in the country, is supporting the candidature of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. You saw Mahinda Gamge recently speaking at an event saying that if the 25% people vote in, the Muslims vote in Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he is going to build a Muslim school in the Kandy district. So you see such statements being made, and people supporting Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and the camp, your camp, has been silent on all those.
No, I don't think we have been silent. And coming to this point where some statements that are being, some rather unwarranted statements being made by some people. I mean, that doesn't matter so much, because the social media is going to give a lot of publicity to those things. I mean, those are bad enough and they are damaging, I agree. But then those are not the decision makers. About this allegation about Pillayan and the what is this other person?
Karuna
Amman. What you have forgotten is this: when a person gives up his commitments towards something bad, he should not be treated as in his old capacity. Now, take for example, Ranil Wickremesinghe, as the Prime Minister of this country, went and signed an agreement with the leader of the LTT, with Prabhakaran, in the presence of Norwegian representatives. So does it mean that he has gone and sold the country? I mean, he did it because that man has agreed to certain conditionalities to do something different from what he has been doing. So in the case of Pillayan and this other man, they have completely given up their connections with the LTT thinking, and they are now new people. So being with them, and it is not a new thing for Mahinda Rajapaksa to go and deal with Pillayan, because they were part and parcel of the SLFP. One person was the SLFP vice president. So the moment
and Pillayan was also chief minister of
the moment they change their style, when they change their position, they should not be treated the same way. If that is the case, we will have no end to these things. No, we will treat everybody as enemies in this country.
But who are people voting for? But
now,
who are people
I have to add one more thing.
Yeah.
Now this Pillayan and I'm sorry, Karuna Amman. Who took them to Bangkok? Who took them to Bangkok? Long before, just after the agreement, they were taken to a hotel in Bangkok, given all the facilities, enjoyment. They were made to see the life in Bangkok. Who took them? A UNP Central Committee member. with the knowledge of Ranil Wickremesinghe, they were exposed, to the world what they have not seen so far. Ali Sahir Maulana took them to Bangkok. That is now these things happen. These things happen because I don't find it bad.
Wait. Ali Zahir Maulana is not here. When you talk about people.
No, I take the full responsibility.
You can't.
I take the full responsibility. No one need be here. Sorry, doctor. No one need be here.
Just a minute. When you're making sort of is it a derogatory kind of statement you're making?
No, it's not derogatory.
Okay.
It is not. I don't find it. I don't see it as a bad thing. What I am trying to see is establish my point. What Ranil did was to expose those people. When they change their mind, they should not be treated in the same way. So why should Mahinda be accused of that?
So we just have to open the floor for questions because we're running out of time.
It's the same argument.
So let's start off with Faraz.
It seems a great pity if we have Dr. Harshad Silva in our company and we don't ask him this very all-important question. Dr. Harshad Silva, what plans to repair this very damaged economy?
Actually, two things we need to do immediately is to continue with the reform process that was begun and halted midway. I'll just give you an example. I see from my window at the WTC office an empty West container terminal, Eastern container terminal with no cranes, whereas I see to the right of it the John Keel's terminal, to the right of that the JAR terminal, to the left of it the Chinese CICT terminal. Now what I'm proposing is that we let private enterprise come in and invest in that Eastern container terminal. Right? I'm just taking one example. Because the state is constrained by debt, there is only so much more that we can borrow to build infrastructure and do the many things that we need to do. So we got to kickstart the economy. And to kickstart the economy, we got to get projects of big and small scale moving. And in order to do that, we got to open, we got to invite, we got to relax the controls, we got to reform the system. So that is to kickstart.
So this mean in foreign investment in the Eastern Terminal?
I mean, what I'm saying is we can have foreign, local. What I'm saying is we got to open up. See, the issue that we had in the hybrid government is that even though we wanted to reform, Mr. Sirisena's ministers who are now opposed to us, who are supposedly with us, are the ones who said don't. So there is a difference in thinking, right? And even the current, I don't know what the Rajapaksa candidate is going to do. I haven't seen much of policy in their policy being spoken about. But we have to continue with the reform. We need to open up more, and I'm being quite honest about it. The only thing I saw in the other camp is that they are going to increase import duties. Increasing import duties is not the way to go in our view. It is to reduce import duties and create a competitive market here. So first of all, we got to get some economic activity going. Of course, there has been some activity in the rural areas with Gamperali and all those things. We've been trying to create more and more transactions taking place. But beyond the immediate plan, what we need to do is to convert this country from a country that is economy that is producing simple products to an economy that is producing complex products. See, we are stuck in what's called a middle income trap. The economy grew rapidly, 8%, and it even hit 9% soon after the war in 2012. And 2013 it crashed to 3.5%. And since 2013 to now, it's been hovering between 3.5% and 5%. And it has been both with the Rajapaksa government and also with the Sirisena Wickremesinghe government. So in order to get out of this rut, we got to have what is called a structural shift in the growth path of this country. A structural shift cannot come just because you wish for a structural shift. A structural shift cannot come just because you want to build some roads and infrastructure. A structural shift has to come if you really move the economy from where we are to where we want to go.
So let's talking about economic policy, Mr. Tendakon.
Yeah.
What changes would Gotabaya Rajapaksa bring to the table?
No, he has been very clear about his economic policy because, you know, ours was an economic policy which was completely mismanaged. There was no direction proper. There was no sense of responsibility in pronouncing or announcing the economic packages. Now we had 3 or 4 economic policy packages announced in this country by the Prime Minister himself. And some of those things were made overseas by the HCID. The 2020 economic policy that he presented in Parliament was made by the Harvard University of International Development.
Let me correct you. I was part of that.
Yeah.
It is not 2020. It's called Vision 2025.
Vision 2020.
I take full responsibility for writing that. No.
Yes.
So it was not. No. Let me tell you. If I will take responsibility for. I take absolute responsibility for writing Vision 2025. It's my thing. I led that, and I had Harvard economists plus local economists, IPS, central bank, treasury, and I led that. So next time you can say that the Vision 2025 was written by me, not
there
by
was
somebody else.
No, you put words into my mouth. You know, it was not Vision 2025. Before that, Mr. Ranil Wickramasinghe
You said
stated.
Harvard University, no?
Yeah, Harvard University was involved in very many times. You know, even in the,
nothing wrong
even in
in
the,
that. Nothing wrong.
No,
in
no, no, no.
having Harvard
what
University involved.
No, what I'm trying to say
No.
is, what I'm trying to say is, it was not an original package of economic package that we entertained all this time.
No.
It was some
complete-
foreign-made thing, and
listen,
which did
no,
not
you
suit
can
our
talk-
country.
No, you can talk about your programs. Please talk about what you want to do. Don't just criticize us. And when I say that I take responsibility for Vision 2025, I led the process, I did it. I had Harvard economists, many of them working with me alongside IPS and others. It is a matter for us to implement it. And if we come, we will implement Vision 2025.
Now
Vision
you-
2025 is a good thing for this country, right?
Now you
so
can-
you can say
at
what
words-
you all have to say, but don't criticize.
No,
But
we
I
have-
give you an opportunity to Mr. Tendakon also
we
to
have,
express his
I
thoughts.
deny your right. I deny your right to say that, because if you say you can't criticize what you have been doing.
No. What you are saying is what
That's
I
not
did. You are
politics.
saying somebody else did.
That's
and
not
I'm
politics.
sitting next to you.
No. What I'm saying is,
No, you can't do this. I'm sorry, right?
Ranil,
I have been very
you are Prime
quiet.
Minister.
Mr. Tendakon, let's talk about the
yeah.
policy that Gotabaya Rajapaksa has.
Now,
Yeah.
the economic policy that we are having today, now Dr. Harshad Silva was saying, we have to start. Now they are still going to start. His Prime Minister is starting things every day. He says, now we have to do something. Then api patan
No,
gandu.
that is because
That is
you
his
are-
policy.
No, that is because people like you with Mr. Sirisena were in the government.
You have been without Sirisena for the last
No,
1 year, but you are not
1 year-
able to
one year
spur
is a-
anything.
1 year. Why not?
No, you are not ready to
In
do
spite-
anything.
But in spite of the
I must
Easter
say,
Sunday
the
attack, in
economy of
spite
this country has been completely mishandled, and now
But
we have to start.
what would Gotabaya Rajapaksa, because we have limited time. There are statutory requirements of the Elections Commission, Mr. Tendakon. So tell us very quickly what the plan is, because I need to move to Chaturanga as well. We need to end the show exactly by 12 midnight today.
The economy is
during
this. Economy, the basics of economy is, today, this country's national income, 90% of that is confined to tax income. Out of that, 80% is being paid by the ordinary people as indirect taxes.
Government income.
Now, this has to be completely changed, because
You mean
some
you mean
development
revenue,
activity.
Revenue.
Yes, the revenue. The revenue of the country, 90% of that comes from the taxing,
Otherwise, what
the
did it come from?
taxation. Now,
No, but
there is
if not, now that's a
not-
valid point.
there should
Where
be
is the
a-
money
where's
coming
it
from?
there should be a development aspect involved in it. For the revenue to come, our exports, our production,
So no,
generation
you're
of
making
income.
a huge mistake here.
National
The
income
government's
and
revenue is tax. Any government's revenue is 90% tax.
No, I
10%
disagree with you.
non-tax.
If there are more exports, then you are earning
No, I
something
think, sir,
other than the normal income.
national income and government income,
Yeah.
two things.
Yeah.
So I think you are talking about national income.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
yes.
you should
the
explain
national
that.
income. The national income, is improved if you the moment you improve the development.
Mr. Devan, I will
You're
stop you.
completely talking something else. You're talking revenue. In a government, revenue is tax and non-tax. Tax revenue is in any country the bulk revenue of the state. Non-tax is things like dividends and profits and other things, and rent and things like that. So in any economy, tax is the major component
I need to
of
move to
government
Chaturanga.
revenue.
Chaturanga, what is the plan of the NPP in terms of the
So,
country's economy? I think
yeah.
for
No,
us,
no, I want to add
one question you
I
asked for
want to
us,
add one thing.
and there's a
This
heated
government
argument about it.
during the last 4.5 years has failed to add anything
Mr.
new
Devan,
to
we
the
have
national
to give an
income of
opportunity
this
to
country.
Chaturanga, and then we will wrap the show
Yeah, so
tonight.
on the economic side, we see 5 issues. One is this major debt trap, and then we have issue with the income and export. We have a deficit on trade, and then also we have a problem with our internal production and services, that we have not fostered our SME sector and given infrastructure for growth. And at the last, we have an income distribution issue. So for those 5 things, we need to have a long-term plan, and what is National People's Power has given is a 10-year plan.
Right,
And it's
so
not easy
yeah.
to get out of this, right? But there is a strategic way that we need to drive. I think the audience need to understand these 2 conversations. Just not having a national policy, this country is doomed, because we are very clear now. UNP has one vision, and every time the UNP had to collate with another party, this will get stuck.
Right.
And when it comes to
Very quickly,
yeah.
Chaturanga.
So that is where a country needs a national policy. That is why National People's Power had put forward a national policy for you to read and understand where this
Right,
country
so I'm going to
should
give
head.
3 minutes, 1 minute each to all the speakers to wrap up and make your final bid for the voter to come and vote in front of the symbol that you are representing. So let's start off the final round with Chaturanga, and then move to Mr. Tendakon and then Dr. De Silva, because he is in the ruling party. We need to end with him. So yes.
Yeah, so I think the people of Sri Lanka needs to understand this political culture has not changed for the last 70 years. What we mean by a cultural change is the intent of the politician needs to change to service. And then with that, you have the ability to take the input of professionals. I think you all have lobbied, we all have requested, we have all asked these things need to happen. But you see, when it comes to the governing, it doesn't happen, because the self-interest or the interest of doing business as a politics has come front than the national interest of the country. So I think there's a need of a change. So this election, you need to take this as that we have as civilians has to reject this system. You need to use your vote against this system by casting it for Anurukumar Disanayake, which will oppose this system. At the same time, your vote will not go waste, because this time you have a preferential vote. So you can use it wisely as intellects. But if you are really confident about this policy and the team that we put forward, just put a cross in front of Anurukumar Disanayake. But if you feel that you need to still watch us, you need to still understand us, you need to see that what we are telling is so genuine comparative to what you see here, you can use your preferential vote and cast number 1 against Mr. Anurukumar Disanayake and put number 2 or 3 against any of the corrupt parties that had ruled our country.
Thank you very much. I need to leave it at that. Now I move my attention to Mr. Rusripa Tendakon. Mr. Tendakon, your bid.
Yes. Now we are on the eve of an election, and we see a lot of mudslinging going on, confining their criticisms and everything to mudslinging and slanderous statements. Now, whereas the country is focusing on more important issues that they are faced with. One is the economy. Number 2 is the national security, which is at stake. They completely messed up. The third thing is the sovereignty of the country. The fourth thing is some development plan for this country. Now people are focusing, while the voters are focusing on these matters, the government that has been in power, the UNP, is more concerned about slinging mud, distributing scurrilous leaflets, literature, along with their policy packages. This is the type of politics that they have resorted to. So therefore, the focus of the country we are addressing very clearly, because we are fully aware as to what the people want. They saw where the government messed up things. You know, the security situation is the best example that we have. In Colombo, after many years, we saw bombs going, and then about 300 people dying, about 500 people being injured. And we saw this due to complete lack of security arrangements. And that is falling, should be rested on the government. And the worst situation is there are so many agreements that are pending which are a threat to the national sovereignty of this country. So we are mindful of those, people are mindful of those, and we are addressing those issues.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Endacon. Dr. Harsha De Silva, your final bid or pitch.
Yeah, first of all, I'm indeed disappointed by what Mr. Tennakon tried to say about scurrilous leaflets and all, because I must respond to it. There's been some issue in my area, and I have very openly said I had absolutely nothing to do with any of this, and I've gone on the record saying, you know, we truly regret what has happened because we don't want to, you know, do this. I am not a mudslinging politician. I have never done that, so I wish you didn't say that, because we are not that. Because I have done enough for this country. I have given a promise to save people's lives. I have started an ambulance service called 1990 Suicide against all odds, and I save people's lives. I don't need to sling mud at anyone. I have done enough for this country, even if I leave politics tomorrow. So I'm very disappointed at you. And listen,
30 seconds, Dr. De Silva, to wrap up. Yes.
I mean, have a certain decency, right? The first, several things, right? I need my time. There are many things. Why Sajid, as opposed to Gotabe, family versus country, one group versus all of us. We Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims, we all live in this country, and Sajid is for everyone, not only for one group. And talking about nationalists, you know, he has his passport, he was born here, lives here, will die here, right? Didn't give up his passport at any point in time. And even though he doesn't wear the national, he is a nationalist in heart, a true Sri Lankan. And he understands the small man. He's going to win because of, not because of the silk Armani suit wearing, Shangri-La, Capital Bug drinking people, but because of the real people of this country, the poor people of this country. He's Premadasa's son. Premadasa did so much for the poor people, and there is some appreciation in people's hearts somewhere. He's a delivery man. He has built homes for people. He has promised and he has delivered. He's corruption free. There are no allegations like our opponent who Mr. Tennakon is supporting on murder, on corruption, on all kinds of things. He's a clean, decent gentleman. He has a plan, and he has a team, and he has you know, showcased some of that team. We are going to fix the cost of living issues of the people. We will strengthen the national security with Sarah Fonseca, and we will create a just and fair society for all of us to live together. And we will do it, waging 3 wars, one against corruption, the other against religious extremism, and the worst one, which we will win, against drugs. And therefore, vote Sajid Premadasa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha De Silva. Ms. Tennakon, to be very fair, you brought in a new argument in the final round. That is why I gave extra 30 seconds for Dr. De Silva to respond. Because I gave 1 minute each for each speaker, and I had to give him 30 seconds extra because you brought in a new argument in the final round. That was the reason. Anyway, thank you very much.
You didn't have to bring it up. Because
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tennakon. Thank you very much, Dr. De Silva. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It was an indecent
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight on the show. Yeah, so thank you very much, Faraz. Thank you very much, Nadeem.
That it was distributed.
Yeah. thank you very much, gentlemen. We need to wrap up the show tonight. We need to end with a good note. 2 more days to go, less than 57 hours for you to go out there and vote for the individual who you think can take Sri Lanka forward, who you think is going to give a safe future for the future prospects of this country. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Talk is cheap, voting is free, hence go out there and vote for the best candidate who you think can steer Sri Lanka towards a new era. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care and good night.
ජනාධිපතිවරණය 2019 රත්මලාන ස්ටයින් මැදිරි සංකීර්ණයේ සිට ප්‍රවෘත්ති වාර්තාකරණයේ ප්‍රමුඛයා නිවුස් ෆර්ස්ට් සමග ෆර්ස්ට් ඇන්ඩ් ෆාස්ට් ප්‍රතිඵල විකාශය නොවැම්බර් 16 වෙනිදා සවස 6:30 සිට සජීවීව
සතුට නිදහස ජීවිතය හොයාගෙන අපිට විවේකයක් නිවාඩුපාඩුවක් ලැබුණාම අපි බොහෝ තැන්වල යන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා. අපේ රටේම තැනක වෙන්න පුළුවන්, නැත්නම් ඉන්දියන් සාගරයේ තැනක වෙන්න පුළුවන්, ලෝකයේ ඕනෑම තැනක වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි කැමති ඇවිදින්න, සංචාරය කරන්න, ලස්සන බලන්න, විවේක ගන්න අපි හරිම කැමතියි. හැබැයි දින ගණනක්, සති ගණනක්, මාස ගණනක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් අවසානයේ අපේ සැබෑ ජීවිතය, සැබෑ සතුට, සැබෑ නිදහස හොයාගෙන අපිට මතක් වෙන්නේ ඔබේත් මගේත් ආදරණීය නිවස. එසේනම් මේ ලෝකේ ලස්සනම තැන බවට පත්විය යුත්තේ අපේ සුන්දර නිවස. එන්න පහන් නිවසට මේ ජීවිතයේ සොඳුරුම තැන් හමුවන තැන.